Hello, and welcome to the Artificial Podcast, with your host Nick Myers.
Artificial
Intelligence.
voice recognition, machine learning,
Robotics.
actionable analytics.
It is Nick's goal to help everyone understand how AI and voice technology are reshaping our lives both personally and within organizations. Your glimpse into the growing world of AI and voice first starts now.
Nick Myers.
Nick Myers. Nick Myers.
Nick Myers.
Welcome to the Artificial Podcast. My name is Nick Myers, and I am here to help break down topics in emerging technology, artificial intelligence, and voice assistant tech to help everyone understand how these technologies are impacting our lives both personally and within our organizations. The Artificial Podcast is brought to you by Red Fox AI. Red Fox AI helps give brands a voice by leveraging the power of AI and voice assistant technologies like Alexa and Google Assistant. If you or your organization is interested in sponsoring an episode, please send an email to the Artificial Podcast at redfox-ai.com. If you like what you hear, please subscribe and leave us a review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, or anywhere that you stream podcast episodes. You can also follow the Artificial Podcast on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube by searching for the Artificial Podcast. You can join our brand new Facebook group exclusively for listeners of the show, where you can meet other artificial podcasters from around the world who are interested in emerging technology just like you. A link to our Facebook group has been included in the episode notes. Thank you for listening, and now a quick word from our sponsors before we jump into this week's episode. Hey, Brett.
What's up, Nick?
You know, on the Artificial Podcast, we talk a lot about the future of conversational AI and voice assistant technologies, right?
So you mean basically in every episode we do?
All right, wise guy. But seriously, think about it. I don't think we truly realize how quickly voice assistants like Alexa, Google Assistant, Siri, Cortana, and Bixby, just to name a few, have embedded themselves in our daily lives. I mean, the analysts are predicting that in a little more than 3 years, there will likely be 8 billion, yes, billion voice assistant users connected to nearly 2 billion global websites, more than 40 billion connected devices.
Okay, yeah, that's a lot. But what are you trying to get here, basically?
Well, I guess what I'm trying to say is that for numbers like these to truly become a reality, a few things need to happen.
Yeah, like more technology innovations?
Well, yes, but I'm thinking of something more, something even more important. We need to have trust. Trust between the users and the technology itself.
Okay, yeah, I'll be honest. Sometimes I daydream about these voice assistants getting smart enough to rise up and take over like Skynet, from Terminator.
Well, I mean, yeah, sure, that could happen, I suppose, but I'm talking about things like trustworthy privacy and trustworthy accessibility and trust that if you're a business, you have full rights to your name and your brand. Have you heard about the Open Voice Network?
No, I haven't. Can you tell me a little bit more about them?
I would love to, Brett. Well, in a nutshell, the Open Voice Network is a non-profit directed fund of the Linux Foundation that is dedicated to making voice assistants worthy of user trust. Members of the Open Voice Network include conversational AI designers, strategists, developers, and other industry professionals from all around the world who are dedicated to paving the way for a future where voice can be trusted and benefits everyone. I'm proud to say that I've been a member since early this year, and it has truly been one of the best decisions I have made since becoming a voice practitioner. And if you're in the industry, I highly encourage you to check it out and join.
Sweet. That sounds cool. So what you're saying is Skynet isn't going to happen?
Oh, Brett.
If you are interested in learning more about the Open Voice Network and how you can get involved, visit www.openvoicenetwork.org or send an email to john.stein@openvoicenetwork.org. The Open Voice Network. Voice assistants worthy of user trust.
Hey there, artificial podcasters. Welcome back to another week and another episode of the Artificial Podcast. This week, I am both excited. I know every week I say I'm excited because truly I'm excited every time I have a guest on the show. But this week, I am very excited and grateful to be able to welcome Lauren Johnson to the Artificial Podcast. And it's funny how Lauren and I actually got connected because before we actually met in person, I had the opportunity to see Lauren have a brief interview with Bradley Metrock, who, for those of you in the voice technology space, you may be familiar with Bradley, at this past January's Project Voice conference that took place in Chattanooga, Tennessee. And Lauren and Bradley had a really interesting conversation about what the Alexa wake word has actually done in regards of, well, let me kind of backtrack and reframe that. How the Alexa wake word has impacted children and adults to some extent in terms of bullying and other things that have actually been an effect of this, which is definitely something that I think a lot of people in the voice technology industry probably just have never even thought of. But Lauren started this fantastic campaign and movement called Alexa is a Human, and we'll be getting into that. But before I jump into my conversation with Lauren, let me tell you a bit more about Lauren Johnson. Lauren is the founder of the Alexa is a Human campaign. Lauren decided to start Alexa is a Human after experiencing the negative impacts of Amazon's choice to utilize a human name as the word for their Alexa voice assistant. Lauren is an avid supporter of voice assistant technology and the benefits that such technology will afford us all. However, Lauren's goal is to also draw awareness to how something as simple as naming a piece of technology, Alexa, can lead to pain and bullying for so many children and adults all around the world. Part of Lauren's mission with Alexa is a Human to share her story and be the voice for so many others who are currently experiencing the negative effects of the Alexa wake word. Lauren, welcome to the Artificial Podcast. How are you?
Thanks, Nick. Thank you so much. And yeah, that was pretty perfect.
Well, thank you.
Yeah. No, I mean, you did a good job summing it up. And that's something I always want to make sure that people in this industry understand, that I do support Amazon as a company. I was a Prime member long before any of this started. And I don't know if I should admit this, but I still use Prime Video all the time, for certain shows for both my husband and I and for the kids. And so it's not, anything negative necessarily toward the company. And I support all of the skills, that people have created. I think it's unbelievable, whether it's for the car, for the home, for businesses. I think the benefits they provide us all are wonderful. So that's the beginning of it. But this started, like you said, for me, for my daughter. She was about 6 when Alexa, the wake word, became popular, or the Echo devices were really a little bit more common.
Yeah.
She was in kindergarten, probably halfway through kindergarten. She was 6 years old. And she started coming home and she was being bullied and harassed. And at first, we really didn't think much of it. And our parenting philosophy is much, we always say it's a little old school. We want our kids to sort of deal with these things on their own as much as they can. And I'm not a parent that calls other parents. It's just not our parenting philosophy. You know, to each his own. That's great. But it got to a point where she's coming home crying, and kids are saying to her things on the bus like, Alexa, do my homework. Alexa, bark. Alexa, clean my room. And so it's almost, humiliating her and sort of dehumanizing her name, Alexa, because of how they're speaking to her. And I don't think these kids understand the impact, the negative impact that this has. So I don't blame them. But then we find out later on that it's also teachers. And it's, we go to a restaurant and we sit down in a restaurant, and like any, family that has young kids, the server or someone will come over, another guest, and just say, oh, hi, what's your child's name? So nice to meet you. And they ask their kid's name and, compliment them on typically, and, both of my daughters are in unicorn shirts or, something, rainbows, unicorns, whatever it is. So, and they ask their name, and 9 times out of 10, when people ask her name, adults, kids, whomever, they laugh in her face. And to watch your child have to kind of crawl into that hole and watch their face. And it's easy to explain kids, but it's pretty difficult to explain adults. So I think the ubiquity of the wake word is the real struggle here when it comes to bullying, because it's not like we can walk away from it. So I can't take her out to dinner or take her for an ice cream to make her feel better, because likely it's going to be there also. Right. Or, we've had experiences where she'll be in the car and we'll try to put on a happy song and forget about it. And then a commercial comes on, some sort of ad that, or even just on the radio itself saying, Alexa, play this song, or tell your Alexa to listen to this podcast, or whatever it is.
Yeah.
So it's really difficult to escape. And I think that's what makes it a little different than some other bullying. Because I think most people have experienced bullying, whether it's emotional or physical bullying in their lifetime. And, that doesn't take away from anything that other people experience. I mean, we all have teasing of some sort, but, the main issue with this is that there's no escape. There's no safe zone. There's no safe place. So you can't leave school and come home and not worry about it, because she's going to, turn on the TV and there's going to be another commercial.
Right. Well, and especially with at this point in time, with how, to your point about it being ubiquitous, how ubiquitous these devices have become in our day-to-day lives, it isn't something that can just be really turned off at this point, right? And as a matter of fact, more than likely, more of these devices and, the Alexa voice assistant are only going to grow in many ways. So yeah, then you pretty much dove into one of the first things I wanted to talk about here and chat with you about, what was the story behind the Alexa as a Human campaign, and what experiences were you having as a mother, and what experiences your daughter was having. And you did a really good job at diving into that. And I'm glad you prefaced the conversation by saying, like, this isn't a bash against Amazon or anything. Yeah. And I think that's one thing you and I talked about initially too, because of course, with the nature of the work that we do and so many others in the industry. And, unfortunately, I think that's the knee-jerk reaction for so many folks, is when, you're trying to draw awareness to a really important issue here, and of course people just, it's all against Amazon and it's all this stuff, and it's really not the core of what you're trying to convey here. So, right. You really just dove into that perfectly. But with that being said about the experiences you've had and what's been going on, so what is the story behind the Alexa as a Human campaign specifically, if you can dive into that?
Sure. So, that's how it started. So what I did was, I lost a lot of sleep at first, and, watching your child go through that, what happened was we were back to school shopping for first grade, and I ran into, a woman whom I had never met. And clearly she had no idea that I was feeling this way, or that I had started writing things down. And she overheard my daughter's name, and both the girls' were named Alexa, and she just sort of vented and, let it out. She's like, this is so wrong. And
she let the volcano explode.
Yes. And she's like, just started kind of unloading. And, I think I was so surprised that I just sort of nodded like, yes, we feel the same way too. And that was the end of it. I mean, I never spoke to the woman again, but that was my confirmation to say, okay, like this is going to be a real thing, and there are going to be thousands of people. And, there are 130,000 girls and women in the US alone with the first name Alexa. So it's not a small problem.
Yeah.
I think for a child, it can be very damaging, but I think also for women too. So what I did was I wrote a letter to Jeff Bezos and to Amazon employees, and I posted it. I said, I'm not going to get mad or angry. I'm just going to try and do something about it, which is like my job between 9 p.m. and 11 p.m. at night, because I have a career and I have a family. So this is my extra work for free, as I call it. But so I put this website out, and it started getting a lot of hits, and I said, okay, I'll try delving into social media, which I had never been on before. And all of a sudden the sort of floods open of other women and kids that have this name and share these experiences. And so the goal is for Amazon to change the default wake word from Alexa to a non-human name. If they choose to use Amazon or computer, or, just the letter X or whatever it might be, that's the goal. And I'd also like an anti-bullying campaign to, be led along with that. But so there's now a group of people, and we talk a lot. And it's become really difficult. I have moms who have shared stories with me. I think I actually talked about this with Bradley Metrock at the Voice, about these kids who went to go see Santa Claus, and Santa was so busy laughing at them and mocking their name that he never asked what they wanted for Christmas. And, as an adult, you can laugh at that, but as a 5-year-old, that's pretty significant. There goes here goes that day. And, the parents are upset and everything. So, it's smaller things like that to many women I know now and I'm in contact with who have changed their daughters' names. They're 3 or 4 and they're heading into preschool. And they've said to me, I feel like I've failed them at their first attempt here, into the world. They're about to go into preschool and I've given them a name that's essentially synonymous with servant or slave, which is, how I describe it as well. And, I have another father that reached out, who's is in the UK rather. And he's like, it just pains me so much to hear my daughter's name being used in a subservient manner. And so at first it was parents of young children and then it was teens. And here, I'll just read you something. This is an 18-year-old, and she said, "Hi, I just found your petition on change.org, and as I myself is interested in starting one. My name is Alexa, I'm 18 years old, and you'd think as a teenager or an adult that there wouldn't be bullying. In fact, it's the opposite. It turns sexual very quickly." And she gave me some examples, which I'll omit from this podcast.
Yeah.
And just say for gross remarks, people like that. And then, she said it's from people who I barely know, and then they laugh it off as a joke. I wish Amazon could understand what Alexas go through on a daily basis. Then I had a mom reach out and of a 12-year-old, and she said, "Thank you so much for this page. My 12-year-old daughter called Alexa constantly suffers from bullying because of her name. She has terrible anxiety and now has to see counselors to try and help her." And she goes on. And then more recently, in the last couple of months, there's another mom who has a 13-year-old daughter, and she was going to school this entire time. And, she basically, we've gone back and forth. She shared her story, but it got to the point where she said a comment from an acquaintance over the weekend upset her so much that she hid in her bedroom cupboard all night on Saturday and told me she wants to kill herself.
Oh, no.
Yeah. So I think, for these teens and preteens, it's really difficult. I mean, they're dealing with normal, school issues themselves, but to have someone kind of mocking you all day, every day with no escape is
right. Well, and especially, there's all the statistics that show the increase in cyberbullying. Of course, that's just permeated, almost every single social media channel here since, the late 2000s. So on top of, bullying that has already been an issue, you throw in social media on top of it, and it I'm sure just makes it 10 times worse, especially for this specific issue. One thing I've been thinking about too, as you're going through some of these examples, is it's one thing for kids to bully one another, which still is not good, of course, by any fathom of the imagination, but it's completely different when adults are doing it. When adults are almost mocking and picking on children because of this. Like, it's like, what are you doing?
Yeah, it's pretty shocking. You'd be surprised. It's pretty shocking. Because these are people that they look up to and trust. So these are, parents, friends, parents, teachers, and and they don't know what to do or how to act because they're trying to respect that person. And it's pretty unbelievable.
But it's like, I after talking with their last conversation, I actually sat back and thought to myself, I'm like, if I encountered somebody with the name Alexa in my life, and like, I wouldn't do that. Like, I would just be like, all right, sure, Amazon's, I'm sure the thought would cross my mind immediately, of course, because that's just how it is, that, okay, their name's Alexa, the Alexa voice assistant, whatever, but there would be no point, I thought to myself, where I would like belittle them or demean them or say something stupid because their name is the name of Amazon's voice assistant. Like, I don't get it.
I'm with you. Yeah, 100%. I'm with you. But I mean, even so, there's another woman, and then I won't do too many examples, but there's another woman that I talk to quite often. Her name is Alexa. She's a journalist, and she works for a very large, well-known newspaper. And talk about harassment in the workplace, but especially now that we're on, Zoom and all the other platforms for meeting virtually these days, when her name is said, everyone's echoes or dots or whatever they have in their hubs, whatever they have in their house, are going off. Yeah. And people are laughing at her and harassing her. And she's like, for the first however many conferences, I sort of took it. But she's like, I got to a point where I had to ask them to stop because it's humiliating. So you would think, yes, that adults wouldn't be in on this, but many women are afraid to speak up in the workplace. I have so many that have reached out. Right. They're told that their name is annoying. and they're asked to go by a different name at work. But I mean, so I say to you, imagine if someone said, hey, can I just call you Nikki? Or would you be okay with Nico from now on? Like, in theory, it sounds okay. But in real life, like, no. You
the look on my face would probably be one for the Guinness World Record book if some random person came up and called me Nikki, I'll be honest.
Right. I know.
Well, and I think, I mentioned to you as well in our last conversation that for those, of course, who may have not seen a picture of me yet, I have red hair and freckles. And, I know I really can't compare the two because they're so different in what the actual situation is and what the issue is. But I can sympathize with everything you say to some degree, Lauren, because back in 2006, it was 2006, 2007, 2005, around that time, South Park decided to come out with their episode on gingers and gingivitis. And, I, even at a younger age, albeit whether my parents should have been letting me watch the show or not, I was watching it as a preteen. I was watching it in my adolescence. I loved the show. And I'll never forget the night that episode came on, because I would watch it every night of the week or whatever night it was during the week that they had new episodes. I actually was watching with my mom, and, we kind of found it funny and everything. But, from then on out, everything changed, because no matter where I went, at least throughout later junior high and high school, and I mean, even in my adulthood, the term gingers just tossed around like candy. I was forever known as a ginger. I wasn't forever known as just Nick with red hair. It was ginger, which again, like, I've developed thick skin over the years right now. And when people bring that crap up, I'm just like, well, F you, and just move on with my day. But that is my sympathy and how I can relate a bit to this, because I didn't choose to have red hair. I didn't choose, and when you name your child, of course, you don't expect them to have to go through life getting bullied because of that. And that's kind of how, again, I can try to relate to this is where the bullying was caused by an entity that was completely out of my control over something they thought would be funny. Again, different than choosing a wake word for the voice assistant, but you know where I'm trying to go with this, right?
Right. Yeah, no,
Okay.
I know exactly. No, thank you for sharing that, because, like I said, I think a lot of people do experience something similar in their lifetime, and it's, sort of a, whether we like it or not, rite of passage, right? So it just, it's something that not everyone, but a lot of people go through. And like I said, I think, that part, yes. And then to add on to it that it's in all your friends' homes every time you walk in,
Yep.
that it's just, or stores, it's pretty unbelievable. I mean, it's funny. Someone just sent me, another person, her name is Alexa, that I've been talking to. She sent me some information yesterday, and she said that the SSA.gov, where they have the most popular names, every year they post them. It's just been released, and the Alexa has fallen dramatically in popularity. It was 90 in 2018, which had dropped a lot, because when we named our daughter, it was like it was in the top 50 and had been for years.
Yeah.
But it fell 49 places, and I think that's pretty unprecedented. It fell more than any other of the top 100 that year. So in the course of 5 years, it's gone from 32 to 139. So, I mean, for us that, prior to the technology, it was a beautiful name, but now it's, people aren't going to do that because they don't want their kids to have to experience anything like this.
Right.
So, yeah.
Well, and something interesting that I've been thinking about as we've been chatting here too. So long ago, I actually changed the wake word for all of my Echo devices to actually Echo instead of Alexa. And the reason I did that is one, I mean, in conversations, when I would talk to the point you've been making about some of the examples you've been sharing where you're in conversation and you say the word, I mean, everything goes off and Echo doesn't come up as much. But even thinking of it beyond that, Amazon always defaults it to Alexa, right?
Right.
And they, from what I've seen, there is not too much publicity, if any publicity, on showing people that you can actually change the wake word, in any capacity, which there is a series of options, but I don't think anybody knows about it. And the default is always Alexa. So, most people will never probably ever change the wake word, even if the option is there, because Amazon's whole goal, of course, is to default it to Alexa for the branding purpose.
Exactly. And I think that's what brings me to the thing that's most important right now. I mean, the bullying has either happened or is going to happen, and we'd like to try and stop that, but ethics, I mean, oh my goodness, like how do you, as a company, and like I said, I'm not bashing Amazon because I
Yeah.
think, for anyone, but especially for one of the largest companies in the world, how do you brand something and not think about the effects that that's going to have later
Yeah.
on? I mean, I don't know, even, as a small business, I think you would, at least in my opinion, you would kind of go through these names and say, okay, this is, A, B, and C, and, this could happen, this could happen. But yeah, I'm pretty shocked. I understand the gender issue there, but on top of that, just to kind of single someone's name out is, yeah, like I said, it's pretty shocking.
Yeah, I would love to have been a fly on the wall in whatever discussion happened as the naming convention, and they've released some info like they were trying to compare it to the Library of Alexandria because
Right.
it was the hub of all knowledge, and that's what they viewed Alexa. There was also some science behind the X intonation in the name where it was easily identifiable by the AI technology to pick it up. They have a whole list of things, but no one will probably ever actually know.
Yeah, I know. And like I
Unfortunately.
said, yeah, and I said before, I don't even fault Amazon Lab 26 that came up with the name. And I have read about the Library of Alexandria and all of that. And from being in the pharmaceutical industry, I understand branding and
Yeah.
names and
Oh yeah, especially for drugs.
absolutely. Yeah. I mean, they all have an X or a Z or something. So I get it. Like, I understand the thought process, but yikes.
Yeah.
Just also, you don't see drug companies naming, their
They're not
their
like
drug.
human names for. Can you imagine taking a drug with a human name? Oh my gosh.
Right. Yeah. I'm sorry. I have to go take my Lauren, or I have
I'm gonna
to
go take my
Nick.
Sam, or I'm gonna
Yeah.
go take my Betsy pills. Like,
Right.
know.
Yes, exactly. Right. So how is it okay that this happened? I know that's what. So I think ethics are, a big question here. You're looking at how the effects of people psychologically, emotionally. I mean, you've got people in therapy. It's in my personal opinion, I think it has to be changed. It seems impossible because of how it's embedded in almost everything now.
Yeah.
And I think one of the big concerns for me right now is that there are so many, there's so many, what's the word I'm looking for? Devices, but not even just, wake words out there that you cannot change. So for example, if you have an Echo or a Dot, to your point earlier, you can go through the motion, or you can say to the device, you can say, Alexa, how do I change your name? But
right.
For like, I don't know if you've seen the new Buick ads or the Lexus ads where it's built right in, there's no option to change.
Right. You can't change the name. Yep.
Yeah. And my brother had the thermostat built into his house, and don't worry, he's changed that since, but, he couldn't change it. And, he's younger, he's much more tech savvy than I am. So yeah, it's wild but so I do think that it's possible to change. And I think that it's possible to rebrand, but I think it's, unfortunately going to be a big fight. But, I was walking past, I brought my younger daughter, Emily, to Target to go get a birthday gift for a friend. And as we're walking through the toy section, I saw this ad for the Echoes. And it said, Alexa, play my morning playlist. Alexa, set a timer for 10 minutes. Alexa, what's on my calendar today? And so I posted this a while back on social media, and I just said, all right, replace Alexa with woman and think about the ethics here. Just think about the concept. So woman, play my morning playlist. Woman, set a timer for 10 minutes. Woman, what's on my calendar for today? People would have gone, berserk.
Well, and that definitely has been a growing discussion across the voice technology industry. At least since I've been in it, there's been a lot of discussion about the ethics of choosing to personify the voice assistants as females versus males, or even just gender neutral, right? And that's something that I've thought about since being in this industry too. It's like, is there a way to overcome that? We have to, because to your point where, sure, the name is Alexa, but at the end of the day, it's still a female voice that you're associating with the female name, so thus female. And in the role that it is, where it's, quote unquote, an assistant that's doing things for you, my thought is, what is that teaching younger children? Right. And very young children are basically growing up now using this technology, using Alexa. And they're going to get in the habit of, commanding the device, and they're going to get used to the female voice. They're going to get used to the female wake word. What is that going to do to their brain as they grow and learn? And what is their perspective going to be on women?
Yes.
I mean, that's
been one of
a
my
very
biggest-
serious question to ask, right?
Yeah, and that's been one of my biggest questions too. I haven't had it answered yet, but yeah.
Right.
But yes, that's been one of my biggest questions too. I mean, and you have to use a very commanding voice. And when you're talking to it, we were over a friend's house recently, and they don't know that we're doing this. And my daughter, my 8-year-old daughter, Alexa, does not know that I'm doing all this. She understands that it hurts her, and she gets upset. And she actually said recently that she wants to write a letter, which I thought was kind of funny. Apples don't fall far, but she doesn't know I'm doing this. So, when we were over her friend's house, her mom was kind of yelling to the speaker, and she said, like, Alexa, volume 6, Alexa, blah, blah, blah. But she's yelling so that it hears her clearly. But yeah, to your point, that's the way people have to kind of feel forced to talk to it that way. So then your name kind of has that connotation to it. I said this too, I've said this in other interviews, but if we had named our daughter Servant, people would think we were absolutely crazy. And yet somehow Amazon has done that for us, and it's accepted. And my thought is that because even though there are 130,000 Alexas, there aren't enough that are speaking up to say this is a problem. If this were, I don't know, maybe Emily, I don't know, or if it were Nick, if it was Nicholas or something, maybe
A
there
more
would be
common name, yeah.
Yeah, maybe there would be more people. But yeah, I think.
Which still, though, the number you gave, 130,000, is still a lot.
Right. Yeah. I mean, yes. And I think, if you take into consideration all the other names, like let's say Alexander, Alexandra, Alexi, even Alyssa will do it. If you put all of those together, it's over 2 million people in the US.
Yeah, it's not a small number by any ways or means.
And I did read recently, though, that Samuel L. Jackson is now an option. I believe it's a buy-up. I think you have to pay for that option.
It's funny because they came out with that, actually. I think it was fall of it was maybe summer or fall of last year. And because I just thought it was funny. I'm like, all right, I can pay $1 to have Samuel L. Jackson say naughty things from the voice of Alexa, which is really the only reason I bought it. So like I could get the explicit version. So when I set timers and stuff, he could do a Sam Jackson thing with this colorful language. Yeah. But yeah, now I think they've changed it, because before you had to, I think it was whatever you chose the wake word to be, Alexa, Echo, whatever, ask Sam Jackson. So you had to say explicitly ask Sam Jackson. Now you can just say Samuel, and it'll go right into it versus, Alexa ask or Echo ask or whatever the wake word is.
Right. And I think that's a huge, step toward a solution. If Amazon, what I would love for them to do is to get rid of the Alexa wake word as a default, and then let everyone customize it and call it what you want.
Right.
Call it pillow if you'd like, call it whatever you'd like. But yeah, I think that would be the perfect solution to this.
And at least, the first step forward is drawing more awareness to the fact that you can currently change the wake word, right?
Right.
Which is not done nearly as much as it should be at the current point in time.
Yes, yes, absolutely, exactly.
So I know you've kind of outlined what your mission is with Alexa as a human, and you talked about writing that letter to Jeff Bezos and some different things, but what are some other things that your campaign and movement is trying to work towards to achieve this mission of hopefully influencing or convincing Amazon to maybe change the wake word, or at least provide some, again, more detailed guidance on the fact that you can and encourage people to do so?
Well, it's kind of makes it's funny when you say that, because so we are doing things. I think perhaps maybe taking maybe the wrong approach at first, because I think many of us were seen as trolling people's accounts, because when you go on Twitter and all of a sudden start saying that Alexa is bullying people, the knee-jerk reaction is to block that person. So
exactly.
I get it.
Yeah.
But so I think social media is part of it, just raising awareness, and also doing things like this. Thank you so much for
Absolutely.
interviews and podcasts, and we are trying to reach out to Amazon, not just to Jeff Bezos, because that's, obviously
Right.
a large, lofty goal, but also just to stakeholders in Amazon and other people who work there. And so far, we haven't had a lot of luck. But I do think awareness in general will help. When you tell people, I think for many people, the knee-jerk reaction is like, okay, princess, this is not that big of a deal. And,
Yeah.
this seems a little superficial. But when you take 5 minutes or 10 minutes to look into it, you realize that it is a big deal for so many. And so just awareness in general. And, that these days seems to be mostly on social media.
Oh, yeah.
And then I think, another thing that we're doing is reaching out to HR departments within corporations, because likely if you have more than 1,000 employees, you've got an issue, because you're probably going to have an Alexa that works
Yeah.
there and maybe experiencing this. So I think, to go more to the third parties, for companies like Buick or Kohler or Lexus or, I'm just trying to think of someone else that is working with them, just to kind of stand up and say, hey, you know what, we'd like a different wake word. We'll use your technology, and it's phenomenal and everything that it can does, and it will help our business, but we'd like a different wake word. I think for companies to stand up, that would be very helpful. Many people that I've talked to that work in this field have said, hey, I agree with you, but at the same time, I'm trying to either be an Alexa champion, or I am,
Right.
Working with Amazon, and I don't want to offend them, which kind of is a little bit ironic, because it's sort of like the company bullying people again. But, I think if everyone just sort of stood up and said, hey, I'd like a different wake word, we'd get really far.
Yeah. Well, and see, that's what I think I told you when we first met. It's like my whole goal with the podcast and everything that we do, albeit, yes, we work directly with Amazon's tools, and heck, our CTO is a certified Alexa developer and all this stuff. I don't really believe in keeping conversation to one viewpoint, because that reduces discourse, that reduces learning, it reduces just general awareness to different ideas. And of course, I think we talked about that's just a crisis all around right now, it seems to be. So specifically, my goal with the podcast, and especially talking with people like yourself, is to keep an open mind and expose people to some of these different ideas, because there's a ripple effect for some of this stuff, especially when you're looking at a company like Amazon, where no matter what they do with any technology they have, any services that provide, it's going to create a ripple effect in some way, shape, or form. And unfortunately, this is one of those ripple effects that, most likely not a lot of people know about, and they should. And maybe people do know about it, but they are too afraid to actually think more about it and dive into how they can understand it more. So yeah, that's just kind of how I've always approached things. And
I love
I'm a
that.
very big believer in just keeping an open mind and open ideas, because the more you try and limit that, nothing gets accomplished.
Yeah. And
Really?
I think, no, I couldn't agree with you more. I love that. And I couldn't agree more, because that's the reason why that I'm doing these podcasts, because I'm trying to learn more about the tech industry or the AI industry in general, just because I'm totally open to all of these, new skills and things that people are doing. It's phenomenal. It's amazing. I mean, clearly it's way above my pay grade. It is way over my head, but, I'm in a different field, but it's amazing, and I love learning from people. So yeah,
Right.
I agree wholeheartedly. It's, it's really cool.
Well, and all it takes is one person to start a movement, right? Like if nobody speaks up and nobody acts about an issue or something that they believe in, or something that, is affecting a lot of people negatively, nothing ever gets done. So personally, Lauren, I think, you should just champion yourself in the fact that you've decided to undertake this and the capacity that you have, because that's just where it all starts, right? Every movement in human history.
Thank you so much for saying that. It's kind of unbelievable. It's not really in my personality to do this. And like I said, I'd never even been on social media before. Like my brothers are still laughing at me. They can't believe I'm on social media. Like, never mind doing this. But yeah, I just, like I said, I felt like you can get angry, you can get mad, or you can try and create change. And
right.
I think even, at the very least right now, a lot of these women and parents, and children are helping each other by connecting and sharing their stories. And I think it's really therapeutic for them, because, as much as I joke about this, and I joke about it being superficial, it's not for so many. And
and just being able to talk about it, I'm sure, is a weight off people's shoulders.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So yeah, it's been a ride, and it's not something I'd ever do. I think my friends would all laugh if they, if I had said I was doing this, they'd be like, "No way, she's not going to do it." But yeah, I mean, I just, not only for my daughter, but for all these other kids as well. I just feel the weight on my shoulders of all these people, and I want to help. And so, if I can put my voice out there and volunteer to talk, which clearly you can tell I do a lot of,
Oh yeah,
then
which is
yeah,
fantastic because you're so
yeah,
knowledgeable about this, right?
yeah.
So with all that being said then, Lauren, how do you think the voice technology industry, maybe, looking beyond Amazon, because this will definitely be, an ethical consideration that really is just already is and will continue to permeate the industry. But how do you think the voice technology industry can work to prevent this from continuing to happen as we head into the 2020s, where, this decade is more than likely going to be the boom of this technology, especially since we may be looking at an ecosystem of potentially hundreds, if not thousands, of voice assistants just waiting in the wings. What are some recommendations that you can share for those of us working in the industry to consider as we evolve this and it continues to grow?
That's a great question. I think it's pretty simple in my mind, and yet also complex, because to think of some other giant brands, like, and I'm just going to kind of roll off the top of my head, but Kleenex or Coca-Cola or Ford or Google, any of these big brands, they're not names. They don't necessarily have to
Mm-hmm.
be. And so I think to choose something wisely, something where you want a letter where people remember. So maybe you choose something with a Z or a hard M, or you choose something with an X. And just maybe it's a made up word. Maybe it's, as simple as giraffe or something, just something that you can feel good with your moral compass, knowing that this isn't going to have an impact on some poor kindergartner, 13-year-old, or woman in the workplace, or, someone walking into a club and the bouncer makes fun of them. All these stories I hear. So I think,
Mm-hmm.
anything like that would be great. And many, many, like thousands of companies have been successful in doing so. So I don't see a reason why. When it comes to the, gender issue, I don't think that there is an issue with having a female name, as long as you have male, or not a female name, I'm sorry, a female voice, as long as you have a male voice as an option also.
Yeah.
Just like any GPS. I don't think anyone really finds those necessarily offensive, because you can choose, or at least I don't have a GPS anymore, but when I used to have them
Yeah.
years
Like
ago.
Garmin's used to have the different voice options.
Yeah, exactly. And they would have, an English speaking, they'd have a Spanish speaking, they'd have a male, they'd have a female, and they'd have someone with an English accent, they'd have someone with an American accent. And I think to have options and to be able to customize would absolutely be the way to go. But to choose one person's name and single it out, whether that be male or female, because I don't have boys, we only have girls, but I can't imagine that it would feel good. Like, my husband's name is Ed. I can't imagine that, he would feel good if people were yelling Ed or Edward all the time
Yeah.
either. So, it doesn't matter. It's just humans are humans. So yeah, I think just to have options would be great, or to just pick something, like I said, like, an animal name or a giraffe or something that, likely there aren't any people with those names. So hope
Yeah.
that wasn't
No,
too wordy.
I know. I think that's some excellent food for thought, because I think a big part of what we're about to see with this explosion of different voice assistants that are going to come to market, and I'm one of those believers that think it's going to be one of those cases where either a company has its own voice assistant, where you're talking with the brand name of the company, they create a voice assistant with maybe a different name, but that still represents the company, or there's a voice assistant that serves an entire industry. But the naming convention and how you invoke that is going to be a huge part of the design of all of these systems. And honestly, my business partner and I, we're road mapping out over the next 6 to 12 months, potentially building our own voice assistant as well to serve a specific industry. And the name, even to start thinking about that, we've had some meetings to discuss that, and it, there's so many considerations, and it definitely is one of those delicate things that needs to be really thought about before you ultimately make a decision, especially taking into account, naming something a human name, the impact that's going to have, as well as the gender you're going to use. And to your point, Lauren, having both a male, female gender option, and again, choosing a name that is not synonymous with a human name.
Yeah. I
You know.
know. Yeah. So it's, yeah, like I said in the beginning, it's just, it's pretty unbelievable that it wasn't completely well thought out, or that they didn't care what the outcome would be. But I hope that everyone moving forward will learn from that. And by the way, as a side note, I think it's unbelievable that you're doing that work. That sounds amazing.
Well, yeah,
I wish I had those talents, but I look
it's
forward to seeing what you come up with and what other
yeah.
people start to develop. I think it's going to be phenomenal.
I do too, and thank you for that, because truly, just the design work of even, I think we initially came up with the idea, we were calling it Project Artemis or some futuristic sciencey Isaac Asimov thing, and I'm like, we're probably not going to end up naming it that, but at least it kind of gives us a direction of maybe
Yeah.
what we want to go in with it, But
Well,
yeah,
it's funny
that's
'cause the Alexa was originally, they said, sort of modeled after Star Trek. So it was sort of a sci-fi thing, I guess you can say, but that's what they were looking for. Of
which
course,
is in Star Trek, it was computer, which I find funny.
yes, yeah, I know.
Which
Sorry, go ahead.
honestly, in a way, again, nothing against Amazon, and as much as then this conversation is about bashing them as a company. But can you imagine what it would have been like if maybe they would have decided to name the voice assistant computer instead of Alexa? The novelty that would have created for people.
Oh,
Oh my
I
gosh!
mean, it would have made my world a lot easier for the last 2 years. I can tell you that.
Yeah, that for
We'd
sure.
probably have 7 of them in the house if that were the case.
Right. So before we start to wrap up our conversation here,
Sure.
I know people on both sides of the aisle of our conversation may look at what we're talking about here a bit differently. Some people will argue, well, is it a people issue or is it a technology issue? So from your perspective, do you think it's the fault of people who choose to intentionally bully others over something like this? Do you think it is solely on the technology or the platform, or do you think it's a combination of both?
That's a tricky question. I
Yeah.
would say I really don't fault people. I mean, do I fault people for intentionally bullying? Yeah. But do I fault, in our examples, what we've experienced, kids for doing it? No. And do I think that, their parents aren't teaching them, or that something's wrong there? Not necessarily. I think kids will be kids. And I know, at least with, in our family, with my own kids, they have very different personalities. So I don't necessarily fault people. I mean, I think it's a little, I don't know, odd that someone wouldn't bite their tongue before they made a comment while we're at the restaurant or the grocery store. Yes. But really, I think if you have to place blame, it has to be on Amazon. I think that, like I said, they're a phenomenal company. We're Prime members, and I
Right.
use Prime Video, so it's not that. But just with this particular part of their business, I think they made a big mistake. And had they chosen a different name, then people wouldn't have the license to bully or to sexually harass or to, harass in general.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess my answer for that, my long-winded answer, is probably would be Amazon, because they need to change the Wake name. And if
that's
they
entirely
hadn't
fair.
needed-
Absolutely.
Yeah. And yeah, I think that's it.
No, that's a really interesting perspective, and there's a lot of discussion, of course, about people in power or entities that are in power. Depending on their decisions, it gives the license to elicit the behavior of others, right?
Right.
And I think again we're seeing that in so many different ways in this day and age. But I think that's a very valid point you made, that in the sense that they chose to use the wake word Alexa versus anything else, depending on the research and the decision involved in that, it was the license for people because it became such a big part of our daily lives, and elicited that license for people to start cracking jokes and eliciting a behavior that isn't the greatest, isn't the greatest to begin with.
Yeah, I mean, people are going to bully, they're going to tease, and we actually welcome teasing in our house. Like, I come from a huge family, and it's almost a compliment. Like, if I'm teasing my brothers, it means I'm closer to them. It's an odd way to grow up, but that's
hey,
just
that's
what we
how I
do.
am with my best friend. We pick
Yeah.
on each other constantly, so I get you.
Yeah, so I love that, and we welcome that. We I don't know if I should admit this on a podcast, but we tease our own children. When they tease us, like, we love that, and so I think people are naturally gonna be friendly teasing, and unfortunately in a lot of cases people are going to bully, and you can't stop that. But this could have been stopped with without having chosen a female name.
Yeah. So then, as we kind of wrap up our conversation here, Lauren, I'll end on this question. Hopefully I'm not throwing too heavy of a question at you here, but, if you were able to sit down with Amazon's leadership team, you got that meeting finally, and you had the opportunity to share your story, and they looked at you and said, all right, what are we going to do? What would your response be?
Well, first I'd probably faint because they actually responded. So that would be
step one.
Step one, yeah. But no, in all seriousness, if I were able to speak to them, I think it's, many things that I've already mentioned here, but just to let them know that they could be the hero in this. They could come out with a whole campaign about, treating people fairly and, equality, and they could easily turn this around and create, make themselves a hero. I mean, we're not trying to sue them. In fact, we're not looking for a single dime. We're not looking for anything out of this except change. And so, of course, it's going to come with some cost, and there's going to be some work that has to be done. But my ask for them would be to change the default wake name and phase out Alexa as fast as possible. And just to let people either choose their own wake name, or choose something else, go back to computer or whatever their original issue. I think Jeff Bezos said in one of the articles that he wanted it to be computer or Amazon. Maybe he wanted it to be Amazon originally, but
I read that too.
Yeah, so that would be one thing. I would also love for them to put out an anti-bullying campaign, and actually, that idea came from Daniel Hill, who introduced the two of us for this podcast. He had said that, and I said, I think that's a wonderful idea to do, just to raise awareness. In addition, some sort of a PSA type ad to let people know what this is doing to other people, and to make sure that they can change it for the future. But I think they could really turn this around as a company and be the hero here for these kids and for these women, if they choose to.
That is an excellent response to that question. And honestly, I got my fingers crossed for you and hope that maybe one day you do get that meeting, truly.
Thank you.
And especially for if anybody's listening to this who works in the voice tech industry, and if you have any strings, feel free to. I'm sure Lauren would be more than happy to have a conversation with you if you're interested in learning more about this. So, but Lauren, this has been an incredible conversation. Thank you so much for taking the time to share your story and about what you've been working on with this. And again, to everybody listening, the intent of Lauren and I's conversation here was not to bash Amazon. It was to draw attention to, an issue that a lot of people don't really know about, that's been a byproduct of the Alexa voice assistant and the name Alexa being chosen. So again, Lauren, thank you so much. And if anybody did want to reach out to you, what are some of the best ways for them to go about doing so?
Oh, sure. Absolutely. Well, my webpage has all the information. We're on pretty much every social media platform that is there, but it's alexaisahuman.com. You can find us on Twitter, on Facebook, on Instagram, any way you feel you would normally reach out to someone. I am here, and it's not just me. There are a group of us, and I'm happy to answer any questions, or and I'm happy to have any more conversations. So ask away. And Nick, thank you so much for having me on. I really truly appreciate it. I know people say that every day, but I want to let you know that I sincerely appreciate you having me on.
Oh, it's absolutely my pleasure. Again, as I kind of talked about a bit earlier, my goal with this is purely education. It's to expose people to new ideas, new ways of thinking about, not only voice, because of course that's been the primary focus of the podcast, but artificial intelligence, different types of technology that are going to impact our lives in ways we can't even fathom just yet. So, things like this and bringing people like you on the show who are really working for a really important cause, I just love. So my pleasure. Thank you so much again.
Thank you. Well, have a great rest of your day. I hope you have a wonderful afternoon, and we'll talk soon. Reach out if you need anything at all.
Absolutely. Take care, Lauren.
Take care.
Artificial
Intelligence.
voice recognition, machine learning.
Robotics. You've been listening to the Artificial Podcast with your host, Nick Myers. To stay up to date with all our latest episodes, you can subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, and Google Podcasts. To learn more about how your organization can benefit by unlocking the power of AI and voice, visit www.redfox-ai.com. Until next time.